Hello, hello, how's everyone doing today? I hope you're having an absolutely wonderful day. I am so excited to be sitting down to finally film this video. I feel like I've been ready to film it for a while. Not like I had hit pan on any of my shadows, but I was just ready to talk about this again. As always, the creator of Pan Those Eyeshadows will be in the description box. This project is exactly what it sounds like. It is trying to hit pan in shadows. I have given myself a usage goal of 20 uses or pan, whichever happens first. If 20 uses happens first, I will roll it out and roll in something new. I have found that helps keep me excited. I find that if I have to work on a matte shadow, for instance, until I hit pan, it's usually over 50 uses. I just not very heavy-handed with mattes. So the usage goal really helps me out. So I've been combining my Pan in Every Palette project with this project, so I'm gonna update both of those here. Let's talk about Pan Those Eyeshadows first this time, because there's kind of a big shakeup that I will be talking about in my Pan in Every palette. First, the tea of the day. I'm drinking matcha today. It's very cold and it's raining kind of torrentially outside and it's beautiful. We have not had enough rain this year, so I've been enjoying the cozy fall vibes. The matcha I use is just one that I bought at TJ Maxx. So this is Sencha Naturals, and I don't think there's like any added sugar or anything in it. It's just matcha. Yeah, no added sugar. It's a good thing. I was hoping that I wasn't just enjoying this because it was full of sugar. No, it's just plain matcha. But you guys know I love my matcha teas, my matcha lattes. There was this one day where I had an iced matcha and I had to do a few errands and I was like carrying this matcha around with me. Almost every place I went, someone asked me, "What are you drinking?" Like they had never seen matcha before. They were distressed to see me drinking a bright green drink. I forget sometimes what that looks like to people who don't know what matcha is. I'm sure it looks odd. Okay, let's get into the update. So this is the color story that I have been working with. I only work on 3 shadows at a time in order to keep myself from being overwhelmed, first of all, but also just to leave room in my makeup rotation for my Shop My Stash, for anything new that I bring into my stash. 3 so far has been working out well. So let's talk about this top shade right here. That is the shade Edge from Subculture. I'm gonna put up a picture of what it looked like last time. And it actually is the shadow I'm wearing on the inner part of my lid today. And that actually was the 20th use. So I'll put up a video of how it looks now so you can get a better look at it. You can see usage in there, but definitely not at all close to pan. I say this every time, but this shadow always amazes me how pigmented it is. I think I'm just gently dipping in there and I almost always end up with too much on my brush. So I have reached my 20 uses on it. I will be rolling it out, but I'm tempted to put this back into my Shop My Stash so I can keep working on the rest of the palette. Even though I've had it out, I've been working on this shade. I did not meet my goal of using the other shades in the palette, which this is the time of year that I should do so. But I did enjoy reaching for the mustard, using it in different various ways. I have never worn mustard and purple before, so it definitely made me think creatively if I wanted to just do more than just a single shadow look, which is kind of what I just go for, a wash all over the lid. But this shade is rolling out of the project. Since I haven't hit pan on it, it will stay in my project panning spreadsheet to possibly be rolled again at a future date. Next up at 13 uses, I have the shade Henna from Nomad Cosmetics. My goal, like I knew there was no possible way I was going to be able to hit pan on this, especially considering how hard packed it was. So then my goal was like, I just want to work off the embossing on the top. Even that is proving to be a challenge. So here's how it looks now. The embossing is still clearly visible. However, I do think that there is progress. You can see that I have been working on it and I don't feel like I've been going super light-handed with this. This is a shade that I have been packing on pretty heavily on my outer corner. I've been brushing it through my crease. Like I've really been using this and that embossing is still there. So this is just a very tightly packed shade. It is very blendable. I really like this shade. It's been very nice for the fall as a very warm brown to use, but still at 13 uses on that one. So this one will be staying in the project. I kind of went out of order on my hand here, but that's okay. So next up is this shade from Sydney Grace. This is the shade Dream Maker. I'm currently at 15 uses on this one. And it's currently looking, you know, a little bit used. There's a bit of a dip going on, just a tiny little one. And I feel like if I had been putting this all over the lid for a bright bright single shadow look, I would be a lot further along on this shadow, but that's not how I have been using it. I've been mostly using it just to kind of brighten up the inner corner, but I'm happy to see use on it because before there was no dip on it whatsoever. I'd only used it a couple times, so I am happy to see usage, but only 5 more times and this will be rolling out, but for now it's staying in. Okay, so again, before we get to my Pan That palette, let's talk about the shade that I'll be rolling in to replace Edge. So I had been toying with the idea of working on a focus palette, and I kind of decided against it. I thought maybe I would get too bored with it, and now I think I'm gonna do it. So for the third shade that I'm gonna be working on, I'm gonna bring in a focus palette. I'm hoping to hit pan on most of these shades, kind of like a Pan That palette, except my goal is not to finish the shades, just to hit pan. And the palette I'm going to roll in for that is this one, my Anastasia Master Palette by Mario. This has been on my mind. I want to use it, and I want to hit pan on the majority of the shades in this palette. So again, I still haven't been able to decide if I want to randomly select a shade or if I want to choose a shade. I really want to work on this green or this blue for this time of year, but honestly, any of the shades would work well for this time of year. Let's just go ahead and randomize. We'll see how it goes. So this palette does have 12 shades. I do have already pan in the 12th shade, so I'm going to use the numbers 1 through 11 in random.org. Oh, okay, I'm so nervous. Let's go ahead and generate a shade. Number 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think this is one of the prettiest shades in the palette. This is the shade Marina. This palette may be old, guys, but its quality is still there. Like, it's such a pretty palette. Okay, so there is the shade. Oh, it's so pretty. Okay, I'm so excited about that. So that is the shade Marina from the Mario palette, and then Dreammaker from Sydney Grace, and Henna from Nomad Cosmetics. Oh, that is so beautiful. Yeah, I can use all of those together. Can't get over this shade. I'm so excited to work on it. Okay, so now that I have pan those eyeshadows sorted, let's talk about my pan in every palette. So this is the palette that I have been working on. This is the Nomad palette by Juvia's, and I have mostly been targeting this shade here. It's a beautiful light gold shade, but I stopped working on it, I would say, pretty early on in the past month because I came to a decision that I think I'm going to declutter this palette, which I know you guys are like, oh, but you love that palette. And it is true. I am so drawn to this color story. I look at it and I feel happiness, like fall, cozy vibes. I just love it. But the thing is, I have to be honest with myself now. I've been trying to do that and I don't want to keep a whole lot of what I would call fantasy self makeup. I'm allowing myself some, but I don't want to keep a lot. And this is what I would classify as a fantasy self palette, because the only time I reach for it is when I make myself reach for it. And whenever I do, like, I'm always, I just struggle. Like, it's just not something that I find easy to use for whatever reason. My looks always end up turning out like really, really smoky, which is just not an everyday look for me. And when I decided that I just needed to be real about my makeup preferences and decided that I did want to pass this on, I didn't want to pass it on with pan. So I decided to quit working on that shade. So again, not because I disliked the color story or because it didn't work. Like I said, this is a palette I waited on for over a year to purchase because I was so drawn to the color story. And now I've just learned about myself that I think I would rather have these in singles to create that time like once a year when I want to use a color story like this. So anyhow, I decided to pass this along, and for the exact same reason, at the same time, I'm going to be decluttering the Warrior palette from Juvia's Place. And I'm not going to swatch anything because every single time I swatch this palette, I convince myself to keep it. The shadows are so metallic and so foiled. My issues with this one are the same as the Nomad. I just don't reach for it unless I make myself, unless I put it in a project. And I have other palettes that I actually actively think about and look forward to using. I think I've had this for almost 2 years now, and I don't think like that about this palette. Like, I can acknowledge its glorious beauty, but I just don't ever reach for it. And I would rather pass it along to someone while it's still in really good shape. Sadly, I do have a pan, but I'm hoping I can find a friend who doesn't care about that. Now the goal will be not to take these out of my declutter pile, because you guys, I have done that already. I had decluttered the Warrior and then took it back because I sat down and swatched it again. So no, I need to not do that. Whew, I feel light and refreshed and ready now. So let's talk about the palette that I'm working on now for Pan in Every palette. So I don't know if I should continue calling it my Pan in Every palette. My goal is still Pan, but I have given myself a 30 usage goal. Basically, if I haven't reached Pan in a palette by 30 uses, I'm going to give myself the option to say that I have used that palette enough and move on to the next one. So the one I'm going to roll in next is this one from ColourPop. This is the Wild Nothing palette. And normally I would consider this a very summer palette. Looking at it, it's very summery, but I feel like a lot of these shades can work just as well in the fall, especially this green, this row down here, any of the sparkly shades. Pretty much the only shade that really screams summer to me is like this shadow here. So the rest of it I feel I could use this time of year as well. Since I am trying to hit Pan, I do tend to focus on a single shade in a palette when I'm working on it. I'm not sure which shade I'm going to work on. I know for a fact that ColourPop mattes take me over 50 uses to hit Pan on. I have never tried to pan a shimmer shade. And this palette actually has several different finishes in it. So this one here and this one, those are like the Super Shock type shades. These two are more, I don't know, more metallic, whereas this one up here, the shade Coastline, I wouldn't necessarily call it a satin, but it's just not as metallic as, wow, I don't know what that was. It's just not as metallic as these two. I don't know, I'll have to play around with this in using it with the other shades to see which shade I end up focusing on. It might just be this one up here. The cream shadow, although this isn't just completely cream, it does have shimmer in it. It's like one of those mattes with sparkles. Oops, I'm swatching this on the wrong hand. Oh well, I'll put it over here so you guys can see. It's a nice cream shade though. Can you see the sparkles in there? Yeah. Anyway, I'm excited to work on this palette. I always have a good time when I do. All right, I'm very, very pleased with my new color story. It's very me, like definitely. And as is the palette I'm rolling in for Pan in Every palette. I'm really looking forward to the next month of working on shadows. I'm hopeful I can have at least 2 shades rolled out next time, the Nomad shade and the Sydney Grace shade. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm having so much fun with this project, and thanks again to Alexi for starting this project so we all can have fun along with her. I hope that you all have an absolutely gloriously wonderful day. I'll see you soon in my next video. Bye!